Five. Oh, uh-oh.
Didn't
The
that work?
Okay, now the numbers are there.
Boom, baba, ding, ding, dong, dong, boom, boom, bee, mama, doo.
In a world where there's a bunch of numbers counting down, two people, a mother and a son, will discuss controversial topics slowly. That world is Nobody Asked.
Woo! Oh, I'm in this movie.
Oh, hello and welcome to Nobody Asked with Maria.
Hello!
That's my mom. And also Colin. That's my me. Today we'll be discussing such topics as Roe versus Wade and the new abortion laws that are sweeping this nation on Nobody Asked. Thank you, everybody, for coming in. And, for the first time in a while, I will be introducing the first topic. Did you hear that transition into my normal voice? That's called show business, baby. Okay? Look it up. Look it up in the dictionary. First look up show, then business. I don't think the whole thing's in there. Show business.
Okay.
Okay. Today's episode is sponsored by HelloFresh. Are you tired of making your own decisions in the kitchen? What if you just let a faceless corporate entity make the decisions for you? Like when you cook, and for how long you cook, and what you cook, and where you cook, and for whom you cook, and why you cook, and however you cook. HelloFresh. Use code FETUS at checkout.
Yikes.
Yikes. All right, guys. So today we'll be talking about some new abortion laws. They're pretty cool. They're good stuff. So I just can't wait to get into it. And I'm sure that it will stir up no feelings from anyone, as abortion tends to not do. Anyway, my mom, the darling of the show and everything, will be handling most of the podcast. But the introduction of Roe versus Wade is on your boy Colin. That's me. Hi. And so here we go. And that was my introduction. And so now I'm going to go into the body of the text. Roe versus Wade.
Tell us about
Roe
Colin.
versus Wade. Roe versus Wade was a case that occurred in the 1970s. But of course, abortions were occurring for much longer before the 1970s than they were happening before, is what I'm saying.
They've always been happening.
They've always been happening. Much earlier than that, there was a liberalization movement of abortion. This was, I believe, in the 1920s, when a lot of articles came out, and there was kind of a push by the media surrounding the fact that illegal abortions were on the rise, and because there were not the sort of the medical practices that come in with there being a legal industry for abortions, many of these abortions were leading to women becoming sick or in some cases dying. And so with this came a movement and a push for the liberalization of abortions. And many states began to take on much more liberal abortion policies than had previously existed. Now, of course, with every push comes a pushback. And the first pushback came from the Catholic Church, who was concerned about a naturalist view of where life begins, and believed that this liberalization of abortion was allowing murders to occur. Sound familiar? We're still talking about the exact same argument right now.
That's 100 years later.
Yeah, it's been quite a while, and we haven't figured it out. But there's a large Catholic push against this, but largely most states trended in the liberal direction. However, there were plenty of states that had laws that were essentially abortions were only available in the case where the woman's life was threatened, or in some states it was not available at all. Then, in the late 60s and early 70s, there was a push by the women's rights movement that said that bodily autonomy was one of the most important elements that needed to be codified into law that would bring us closer to a truly equal society between men and women. And this women's rights group started pushing more strongly for these abortion laws to become even more liberalized. And of course, with that push, evangelicals became much more involved. And what you'll hear a lot in the 1970s and in all of these pamphlets that were being handed out by the evangelicals with this liberalization push was among evangelicals, there's this concept that is pretty pervasive of the falling morality of America. So the idea that there was once a time that America was the moral peak of society, and that it had a trajectory towards like a completely moral world, which I imagine is a bunch of only Christians doing only Christian things.
Of course.
And then at some point, something happened, and this will change church to church on what point it was, but the target often will move forward with time. At some point, there was an inflection point, and the arrow of American democracy began descending away from morality. And for a lot of evangelicals, this feels very true, and then you bring in arguments like abortion and things like gay rights and all kinds of other things, and evangelicals will begin to agree, well, you know what, America is falling away from morality. So this kind of language became really pervasive in the evangelical church. But it didn't all come to a head, and the liberals and the conservatives didn't start separating up until, or at least as dramatically, up until Roe versus Wade, which was a case between Jane Roe and Wade. I don't actually know who Wade was. Who was Wade?
He was the district attorney, I believe, of whatever state this happened in. I didn't write all this stuff down.
Texas.
But he was district. Okay.
It was in Texas. So everything comes down to Texas in America, it turns out. But this was in Texas, and the abortion laws at the time were that abortions were completely illegal, except for in the case where the woman's life was in danger. And so Jane Roe, whose name has come out, but I just don't know why.
That's not a real name.
But,
yeah.
Jane Roe, well, because of how controversial the case was, she was named Jane Roe, was not able to access the abortion that she wanted, and so this case went through. It ended in a 7-2 decision, which would be rare by today's standards. And the 7-2 decision, I think, on first inspection is a little bit confusing. There's a little bit of a, how does the Supreme Court work that comes from this whole thing? But, of course, the Supreme Court's whole purpose is to deny or uphold laws based upon whether or not they violate the Constitution of the United States. However, it's not that a law needs to violate one specific clause. It needs to violate sometimes the overall implication of why the Constitution was written in a certain way. So something that had become a pretty regular, it had made a regular appearance in Supreme Court decisions, was this concept that codified into the Constitution is a right to privacy. It's in the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, I think the Seventh, the Ninth, the 14th. And it's that all of these amendments contain clauses where the implication is that this would be wrong because it violates someone's right to privacy. So, for example, if you are trying to regulate what religion someone can be, it's violating their right to privacy because your choice of religion is a private choice, and the government should not be involved in that. And you shouldn't need to disclose your religion. You shouldn't need to, the government just shouldn't be meddling in that nonsense. In the case of abortion rights, ended up coming down to the idea that bodily autonomy is also a case of privacy, that your right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness includes the right to your body, And the ability to regulate your own body is an issue of privacy. So something that, like a line might be drawn to if a government wanted to regulate if you, an adult citizen of the United States, could get tattoos. That would violate your right to privacy through bodily autonomy. Well, in this case, in Roe versus Wade, and this is actually kind of confusing because I thought Roe versus Wade just said that you couldn't regulate abortion. It was
That's not what it
actually
says.
it was actually a little bit like uh, even in the side that decided for abortion had to be legal in some cases, they were saying there needs to be a balance struck between
Mm-hmm.
the potentiality of life, which exists in a fetus to a baby, right, and the bodily autonomy of a woman. Again, does this sound like we've been talking about it before?
Right?
And so in their decision, and my impression is that this is actually pretty irregular, they put out guidelines for how abortion could be regulated in a way that it both didn't conflict with bodily autonomy and respected the potentiality of life of a fetus, of a, yes, fetus, yeah,
It's a
um,
fetus.
it's a fetus, yeah. uh,
At some point. At
and
some point, it's a
so
fetus.
in that it regulates on the basis of trimesters. In the first trimester, they said that you could not regulate abortions at all, that abortions needed to be freely available, not free in terms of money, but available as in, unregulated by the government
Accessible.
to
Yeah,
all
unregulated.
individuals in the first trimester. In the second trimester, I found this language incredibly vague,
Yeah.
but you can regulate as long as it's related, that's the softest word ever, to the health of the mother. So I guess that means that in the second trimester, you're allowed to disallow abortions unless it might impact the health of the mother.
Right. It sounds like you can have emergency abortions at that point,
Yeah,
but you
that's
can't
like the
just have
most
free
conservative the law
abortions.
could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then in the third trimester, regulations are allowed except for ones that would impede a woman from getting an abortion in the case where it's a risk to their health or their life. So, so in this court decision, there was kind of a guideline put out for
Yeah.
when do these lines cross? When does the potentiality for life outweigh a woman's right to privacy and bodily autonomy? And that was the decision that came out of Roe versus Wade, and that's what we'll be talking about as Roe versus Wade is in. It's kind of hanging by a thread right now. But needless to say, after this decision, those forces that were bubbling under the surface concerning abortion, once it was codified, there was the women's right movement that treated this as a massive win, which I mean, I think to be fair, it was a massive win for the women's right movement. And then there were the evangelicals and Catholics who were emboldened by a new mission, a new goal that they could unify against. And then essentially every conservative president that was elected after Roe versus Wade did have a campaign foundation that was centered around a mission to overturn Roe versus Wade or to fill the court with justices, which now, almost 50 years later, we're there, baby.
We are somewhere
We are there.
interesting for sure. For sure. We are somewhere super weird, super interesting. And that is the background. I will say in 1992, I believe, that they did sort of readdress Roe v. Wade. And instead of having these strict guidelines about first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, it went to viability. Because as technology and science improves, the viability age goes down and down and down and down. So it does kind of move when you can have an abortion into a much smaller window when you start considering viability.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is if you're following Roe v. Wade. I think there is obviously plenty of movement afoot right now to overturn Roe v. Wade. And I think that is important to understand all of these bans that are coming out. And not just bans, but just general abortion laws and all of these guidelines and all of these restrictions. It is to me, I'm starting to think it is to force the Supreme Court to address Roe v. Wade again. Because let's be real, things change, right? The things that the Supreme Court ruled in the past can change in the future. And laws in the Constitution, amendments, all that stuff can change. Nothing is firm and fixed, unfortunately. And
Hmm.
this is one of those things that when you hear people saying this is a settled law, it is not a settled law. Nothing is ever a settled law, and I don't trust anybody who says so. But that's just me. That's just me. I do want to say that also, that since between 2011 and 2019, that's what, 8 years, there were over 483 abortion restrictions enacted just in that time period. And I
Yep.
think in the last year there's been about 100 attempts. I don't know that they've all gone through, but there's been 100 attempts. So it is serious business. It is very much in the forefront. It is all happening right now, and you can't ignore it. You can't. So I think I want to talk about some of the big ones. And I think Texas is a big one. And they were in the news, I think, yesterday because there was a Supreme Court decision. Well, not decision. I don't know what you want to call it. Ruling with regards to it. But I'll get there. Let's talk about what it is first. That is the one that they like to refer to as the fetal heartbeat law. And that at about 6 weeks, around 6 weeks, that is when you can start hearing a heartbeat from a baby. And that is when they have decided you can't have an abortion after the 6-week period. And what they've done, which is very interesting, and I will say other states like Idaho have tried to do the same, is that what they've done is, let's see, how would you say this? What have they done? They've basically given private citizens the right to enforce the law by suing providers who aid and abet the procedure for at least $10,000. You can do civil suits against providers. So you heard that your neighbor had an abortion, you find out where they had an abortion, and you can go and sue the provider who did that, who did it outside of the 6 weeks time period. It's basically turning everybody into I don't know, almost like a Scientology police. What's the wrong thing that you did?
Abortion vigilantes,
Abortion
or like
vigilantes.
bounty
Yes.
hunters. It's kind of interesting. Is this a workaround or something? Like, why would this be the system that they suggest?
Why is this? It is interesting. I don't know why this is the way. I don't know why they're making private citizens be involved in the process. I'm sure there's a reason for it that I have not put my finger on. But I will say the reason that they were in the news recently, like yesterday in the Supreme Court, was because I think some providers sued some specific government officials about it. And they're saying that you can't sue government officials because they cannot enforce the ban. And it's private citizens that are going to be the ones that are doing the suing. So why are you
Hmm.
trying to change the law or void the law by suing government officials? You can't do that according to them. But there are other there's other cases that are in the works as well. So this is not the end of adjudicating what's going on in Texas. I'm just saying this is right now the one that is being heard and is being set aside as it's not going to work. So that's the 6 week, which is one of the strictest out there. Shoot, I can't remember. I can't remember if that one. I can't remember if that one had. It feels like a lot of these they're not even stipulating for incest and rape. That will allow you to be outside of the window. A lot of them are not even taking that into consideration. The only time you can be taken into consideration is for literally your doctor says you're going to die if you don't get one. That's the only stipulations in a lot of these. It's real weird. And what is also weird is when you have such a narrow window, it forces you to make a decision right away. Something that if you had given some time to mull over and said, oh, maybe I can figure out a way to make this all work, you might have kept your baby. But now you're like, well, shit, this scares the shit out of me. I'm done. I'm out having an
Hmm.
abortion. So is this really doing what you want it to do? I don't know. My mother asked me why I was so upset about all of it, seeing as my tubes are tied. And I told her my daughter's tubes aren't tied. Their daughter's tubes won't be tied. It's all so horrific and scary. Yeah, it is. You have to think past yourself sometimes and how it's going to impact other people. 100%. Okay. Then we can move to Kentucky.
So
Kentucky.
sorry, just to wrap that in a tight little bow. The state government has regulated that it's not possible after 6 weeks, and
Right.
then they also created a form of enforcement through
Yep,
its
an
private
incentive.
citizens. That's the
And
Texas law.
yep,
But it's through civil suit, which is kind of interesting. So it's
it
not a
is.
criminal sentence. I mean,
No.
it is an interesting program that they've created there. But yes,
Yeah.
what it creates is a fire under the ass of the women that do want an abortion. Which
Yeah.
I guess if you are concerned about, the life of the fetus, you, I think that most would say, do I think this? That most would say that if there's going to be an abortion, they want it to be earlier. So maybe it is doing what they want it to do. It's either preventing abortions, which is what they really want, or it's making the abortions that would happen earlier.
Well, I
Maybe it
don't
is
know
doing
that
what they
it.
want to do.
I don't. I think the numbers have gone down in Texas, but that's only because people are leaving the state to get their abortions. So,
Well, yeah.
but anyway, okay. So then we can move to Kentucky, and I will also say that that was also in the courts, and it has been blocked right now. It got blocked about a week ago because
Hmm.
providers could not comply with the confusing set of rules that they were given. Okay, so this one is, let's see. And it was vetoed by the governor, and they still had enough votes to get it passed outside of the veto. So Kentucky feels pretty strongly about this, which I think is important to note. Okay, so let's see. This bans abortions after 15 weeks. We're going to hear that number a lot. This is a very common. 15 weeks is the number for a lot of states right now, including Mississippi, Florida, and Arizona. So that is a big one. I don't know what 15 weeks means to people. Why that number seems important. I think it has to do with some development of the brain and possibly
Hmm.
your nerves, even though I think science says that they can't feel pain at 15 weeks. Some people disagree, not based on science. They've decided, no, 15 weeks. But that's not what science says. Anyway, after 15 weeks, there is an exception for emergencies. So I think an ectopic pregnancy or something that is going to kill the mother, but not for rape and incest. Let's see. Women, here's the other rules. Women must be examined to receive abortion pills. I want to note that an abortion pill and a Plan B pill are not the same thing. Those are different
Hmm.
things. An abortion pill would be after you already know you're pregnant, and they can happen up to 10 weeks after you become pregnant. Where a Plan B, that kind of kills, it stops ovulation from happening. So it stops the pregnancy before the pregnancy happens. And that's within 5 days of having unprotected sex. So I just want people to know those are different things because I wasn't sure, and now I know. Okay. So yeah, you cannot be given an abortion drugs without informed consent at least 24 hours prior. So you have to watch a video. You have to sign these documents, these official acknowledgments that sound like legal documents stating that you know what the risks are. And then you have to wait another 24 hours. So this forces you to have at least 2 appointments to get this done, just to get the abortion pill. And then here's the weird part is that in these documents that you signed, it says abortion-inducing drugs may possibly be reversed if desired and should be done as soon as possible. There's nothing scientifically that would tell you that that's true. I'm pretty sure an abortion drug can't really be reversed, but for some reason they
I
want you to
mean,
believe that.
maybe they think I'm just gonna take a slight. They might think that if you regret it 10 minutes later, that you could purge and like reduce the chances that the drug takes. Maybe.
Maybe, yep. And in some cases, you have to have an ultrasound first, and then you also you have to. They want to make it as intrusive and as really a baby as possible.
Did you
And
see
it's like
Vinny's comment?
there are states that have looked at legislation that would prevent women from traveling out of state to get abortions. Whoa!
Yep,
And they
I
would be
saw this
subject
too.
to the same punishment as murder. How can you prevent me from leaving the state? Now you're controlling my ability to travel across state lines? Oh man. Oh man. They've looked into it. Interesting. I haven't seen anything written in law, but I think that's something to pay
I,
attention to.
I've seen things proposed that are similar to this. Now, uh, for years before even Obama was president, there were bills proposed that were like making abortion punishable as murder and stuff like that. That you can propose a bill on the floor if you're a senator, a state senator, or a state
Mm-hmm.
congressman. So sometimes these will be inflammatory, but from what I saw, there was some support surrounding it that, like, if you wanted to continue to be a citizen in Texas, you could and you got an abortion outside, then you would be punished. You could be punished by murder for going outside. I don't know.
Oh my
It's
lord.
pretty fucking weird. Even the United States doesn't do that with, like, when you go and do drug tourism and shit. It's like, all
Yeah.
right, well, if you're in a different
Land
country, go do stuff in that country, I guess.
Land of the free, land of the free. What? That doesn't sound like the land of the free. What's going on? If you can't
I
even
can
move,
definitely think of a case where I would support criminal punishment for people doing things that are illegal here that are legal in other countries. I can think of one where I would support it. So,
well, I'm not even talking about that. I'm saying you're crossing state lines. You haven't even left the country. That seems crazy to me. That seems like
state lines is a little crazy.
All right, so that's one of the 15. That was Kentucky's 15 week
Yep.
ban. And what did I
15 year,
say?
very liberal.
That one is currently on hold, but that's just because the things that the providers had to do, with signing all these documents, all of this other stuff, they've said, I don't know how we're going to do this. And so it's on hold right now. I did also want to say, I also said Mississippi, Florida, and Arizona. I will say that Arizona also has made it a felony for providers to do abortions outside of that 15 weeks, and that they do not care if it was rape and incest. They do not care. Florida doesn't care if it's rape or incest. Mississippi didn't seem to take a stance on that particular part of it, because Mississippi will even allow it if you have like fetal abnormalities. So that you can go outside of the 15 weeks if you have fetal abnormalities, but not genetic abnormalities, which I thought was interesting. Like, okay, you can't.
How specific of them.
Yeah.
I didn't even know they could pronounce the word genetic. Boom roasted.
I know. All right.
Roasted
All right,
that state you live in.
I do live here. It's nice and weird. Okay. Oklahoma. Well, we got to talk about Oklahoma. We're going to just move on to Oklahoma. Okay. This is the big one right now, because what they have done is over the top. We thought Texas was bad, right? We're going to let citizens just try to sue providers because their neighbor got an abortion. Here it is going to be illegal except for in medical emergencies at all, period, exclamation point. Rape and incest, don't care. Illegal at all. If you perform
at all times,
felony, at all times.
What?
Unless you're gonna die. Unless you're gonna die, illegal. Okay.
How does the pill come in on that?
Contraceptives are okay. So Plan B, okay.
The pill counts as a contraceptive. All right.
Still but the abortion pill, no.
That's what I'm talking about. So you can't take the morning after pill?
No. So the morning after pill is considered contraception.
I believe. Man?
But abortion pills are different. I'm just saying they're different things, and it's important to understand that. Okay. So if you perform an abortion, felony, you can get a max of 10 years in prison. You can get a fine of $100,000. So I don't, you're not going to get anybody to do this, really. And it's crazy because performing one in a lot of these cases is, here's a prescription for an abortion pill. Nope. That's what you've performed an act, and now that is 10 years in prison for you. So I just want to say Oklahoma they thought, I don't know how far I can go. Let's try to go all the way. Mm-hmm. All the way. Okay. I want to talk about some of the people who proposed these bills. And these are just a few people. There's so many bills, I can't possibly cover everybody that proposed one.
I will bring up photos if you share my screen when I put it on.
Okay.
Of these schmucks.
I don't know. I don't care who we start with. Okay, let's start with Oklahoma's Jim Olson. Okay. Let's see. I wrote very fast, and I can't read what I wrote. Oh, I know what I wrote. He was saved by the grace of God. I need you to understand that. He's a preacher and a missionary. He was a lot of things. He was a farmer. He was all kinds of stuff. But preacher and a missionary is the one that I care about. His passions. I want to tell you about his passions, because this is what he said his passions are: family, church, working out, I don't trust those two things together for some reason. It sounds weird. Okay. History and constitutional law. I feel like this is an interesting grouping of things that tells me a lot. Here's a lovely quote from him that you will enjoy. While good government is imperative, it can in no way be a substitute for the more important matter of individuals, families, and God, and serving Him, according to the Bible. So government's important, but not as important as serving God. And I just want to circle that word, individuals. Individuals. This seems to be a word I see a lot lately, and I don't understand it because you're trying to make decisions for other people that have nothing to do with being an individual in the way that I would understand it. Ooh, which leads me to Nancy Tate. I want to talk about Nancy Tate.
You're
Nancy
not sharing
Tate.
my screen.
Shit, I'm not. Okay. Oh, I forgot to share your screen. Oh yeah, this is this fella. That's old Jim Olsen.
Yeah, I just want to take a pass at those. I want to take a pass at those SNL jokes. The like, you know what I'm saying? Yep.
Yep. And again,
the
his family.
good old Jim Olsen seen here looking at a preschool burning down.
Exactly. And his passions were what? Family, church, working out, and constitutional law.
Just getting some reps in. I like to get some reps in before I regulate women's bodies. You feel me, baby?
Oh my gosh, it's so weird. It's so weird. Okay. So what I say, Nancy Tate is Kentucky. Okay.
Got it.
I want to tell you that in a 2018 election, she won by 6 actual votes. 6.
That's good stuff.
6. She won by more later, but in the 2020 or whatever, but 6. My mind was blown that you could win by 6 and not have a do-over. Okay. Apparently she worked for UPS. She's a Catholic with a business degree, so I'm assuming she didn't deliver out of a UPS truck, but I don't know. But I want to talk about, you got her. Okay. She does sort of look like somebody that would drive a UPS truck.
Oh my goodness.
Or that maybe like a 3rd grade teacher. I don't know.
Dude, just like, hey, a little advice for everybody here. If your photographer shows you your photo, it's because your photographer wants you to say, oh, let's take another one. I mean, doesn't she look like just the smelliest thing was wafted under her nose seconds before this picture? Goodness gracious.
Maybe that's as good as it gets, I don't know.
I would put real money on the fact that as this photo was taken, the photographer said, say cheese, and she said,
All right, so what I want to tell you about her. I want to say, so she proposed that, what did I say? What state did I say? I don't even remember anymore. Kentucky. That's the 15-week one where you have to be examined and all that shit, right? So what I want to say about her is that I happened to look at a bunch of things that she was an author or a co-sponsor of. And I mean, it was things like, religious exemptions for, I'm going to say, COVID shots, stuff like that. So, I mean, it was a lot of stuff, but that one stuck out to me because isn't that also about body autonomy? But, I guess that's something else. Anyway, so here's a quote from her. She says, I stand for limited government, bullshit, individual responsibility, interesting approach, and personal freedom. Okay. It's an interesting grouping of words.
Yeah. I don't know.
So that guy
does feel a little bit pick 'em choose 'em situation.
What do you mean by pick 'em choose 'em? Pick which freedoms, pick which individual responsibility.
I'm for individual responsibility when it hurts you. I'm for personal freedoms when it helps me. I'm for
limited government. Yep, limited government that helps me and hurts you. Perfect, even better. Yeah.
When it helps my stocks. Yep.
We talked about Jim Olsen and his, his belief in the individual. She said individual responsibility, which I find interesting because to me, when I hear people say bullshit like that, I hear close your legs. close your legs. You wouldn't need an abortion if you just closed your legs. Individual
Yeah.
responsibility means close your legs. As if it was that easy. As if only single unmarried women are getting abortions. That is a lie. But anyway, okay, we're gonna go on to the last dude that I have information on. I have a lot of information on him because he's the dude you need to watch out for. This is Texas, Brian Hughes, and I need you guys to really pay attention to this guy because I feel like this guy is going to be a presidential nominee at some point because he's charismatic, he's low key, he knows how to talk to Democrats and act like and act kind and sweet and just pretends like he's a country bumpkin that's he's not going to hurt anybody. But then he does stuff where you're like, oh, this guy knows how to play the game and is as underhanded and devious as they get with a gentle smile on his face. So pay attention to Brian Hughes. You got him yet?
I kind of like them. Brian Hughes?
Brian Hughes of Texas. Brian with a Y.
Oh, I got it. Oh, look at him. Look at him, his nice little smile.
He does have a nice smile.
Him.
Sometimes he's got facial hair, sometimes he doesn't.
He's got those Staten Island eyes, though. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe he's got an iron deficiency.
Yeah, it's always the iron deficiency. I'm struggling to share my screen. Give me one moment that you can start.
Okay. I will tell you that he gets high marks from the American Conservative Union, which is, I don't know, CPAC, which is, I guess, it's a conference that they have. And I want to tell you about this American Conservative Union. Here's one of the quotes from them on their website, that their conference illustrates how conservative policies work better than liberal alternatives to solve the problems America faces. Okay. So let's tell you about this guy, Mr. Brian. Okay. On weekends, he sings at a small evangelical church he began attending as a teenager. He's always been this guy. In 1984, he watched the anti-abortion film, which maybe we should all watch to refresh ourselves. I'm sure it's terrible. The anti-abortion film, The Silent Scream. And after seeing that, it hit him so hard that abortion law became the focus of his entire career. This dude, this is what it's been about from jump. He has been a politician for a long time, and this is all he cares about. And let's see. This is what he said about, because I told you, Texas does not care if you got raped when it comes to their law, right? Or incest. They don't care. He said, when it comes to rape, we wouldn't want to take a terrible situation and make it worse by taking the life of the unborn baby. Protecting innocent human life is the highest responsibility we have. Bullshit. Utter bullshit. He's a piece of shit. Oh,
yep.
Maureen was forced to watch in youth group. That's what I want to know. Where did he watch this? So I'm guessing he watched it at church. And I guess it's not 100% accurate. They slow it down to make it more dramatic and make it look like the baby is in all of this pain as the abortion is happening. He's a scary dude. And it's not just abortion. It's all of those ultra conservative policies, anti-gay policies. All the big ones that are happening right now, he 100% has his hand in, but this is the one that is, I guess, close to his heart. He doesn't care that an innocent person was raped. He cares about the innocent life that has now been put in them against their will. He does. He's awful. I'm just telling you, I don't like that language. It upsets me greatly.
Okay. Well, then you're going to love what I'm about to say. Okay, which is that I'm on board with any evidence that this dude is straight up maniacal. However, if a person genuinely believes that this child is alive, I feel like if you put yourselves in their shoes, you would see how that argument makes perfect sense. Going, yes, it's terrible that a rape occurred. Yes, absolutely, right? But even in normal rape cases, right, most people would go, murder is a cruel and unusual punishment for the rapist. At least that's what our legal system says, right? So then to, as a result of the sexual assault, say that the murder of an innocent, I'm not saying I agree with this, I'm just saying if they believe that this is an innocent life and that it's justified because something bad happened earlier, I think that if you put yourself in the shoes of someone that genuinely believes there's a baby in there, that you would see how they get to their conclusion. Don't agree with the conclusion.
I don't.
But
listen, I understand it to a point. It's just where they are deciding life begins, I find frustrating because it feels like it has very little to do with science and more to do with your religious conviction. And we are to have a separation of church and state. We are not all the same religion, which I think is important to remember. Evangelicals and just Christians in general like to think all of America is in fact Christian. And if they're not, they ought to be, right? That is part of the tenet is we must get you into the folds. We must save you. That is our job as a Christian, is to save everybody else so that we can all be Christians and saved together. So they think they're doing you a favor. But we are not all the same religion. And so I would like to talk about a few religions that are not anti-abortion, that it is kind of woven into their thought process around their belief system. We can talk about Judaism, right? And that in the first 40 days, they view the fetus as mere water. And then after that, it is part of the mother's body for the duration of the pregnancy. You are not an independent being. You are part of her. And human dignity is enough of a reason to get an abortion. Emotional stress, all of that stuff they view as important. Any kind of, emotional trauma is as valuable and important as physical trauma. And one would think being raped would fall into possibly both types of trauma and is a good enough reason for them. In fact, just being stressed out is a good enough reason because they don't view it the same way.
Well, let's be honest, Mom. The Jews generally have it right. Most of the time, they get it right so much where it's like, are you even a religion? Like, what is it about the Messiah coming that makes religions petulant? It's as soon as you start thinking that you need to convert other people to your religion that you become like an odor is cast upon your religion. But I mean, outside of the whole, like, you need to marry a Jewish girl because the maternal gene passes down Judaism, outside of that thing, the Jews get it right the whole time. That constantly. It's just like, of course that if you had asked me before this, if the Jews have an exactly perfect opinion on abortion, I'd go, probably.
Well, here's one.
I don't understand how they always get fucked in history. They have the best opinions.
You probably answered why. There's not enough of them. They have the best opinions. That's a good reason to fuck them because they're getting in the way of other people's stuff. Also, they used to control the money.
And people hate bankers, and they were the only ones. Yeah, they were the only ones that were allowed to be bankers because the religions forbid their followers from being bankers. I know the actual reason, but I'm just saying, it's really proof that the world is unfair that one of the most goated religions keeps getting fucked by society. I just don't understand it. Yep. There's also the Israel thing, but we won't get into the Israel thing.
The Israel thing is, that's a mess.
That's a little rough.
We can talk about that another day if you want. Okay, Islam. Here's one that maybe you didn't expect to have, positive vibes concerning abortion. They also listen. They between 120 and 40 days, depending on which sect of Islam you're in, believe that's the spirit doesn't enter the fetus until either 120 days or 40 days. So before that, it's no big whoop-de-doo. And if the mother's in danger, it's never a big whoop-de-doo.
How common is that? How
the 40-day thing?
How common? If you took a poll of Muslims, most of them would think the 40-day thing.
I don't know if they would say 40 or 120. I'm just saying that's when they believe the spirit enters, and that's when it matters, right? It's when there's a soul.
What? Okay, well, hey, rare dub for Islam. Good for them.
I know you weren't expecting it. Wicca. Okay, this one you probably wouldn't be that surprised by, but they say that abortion is a spiritual decision that should be free of state interference.
Wicca?
No big whoop-de-doo. Wiccan, yep. All right, here's the important...
of course they did, yeah.
Of course they did. Okay, the important one. Let's talk about the Satanic Temple. They were founded in 2013. They do have IRS status as a religion, right? Do they worship anybody? Absolutely not. However, they do have a tenet that they have, like, I think it's 7 different tenets, which I did not write down. I only wrote down the one that mattered to me. And it's that one's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. And let's see, what does this thing say? And they like to use the Religious Freedom Restoration Act because just, what is it? The second, which amendment do we protect religion? The first one?
Yep, the first one. Yeah.
The first one. Apparently, that doesn't always work to get you to not be able to do stuff. So another act that was called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, I believe it happened in 1993. It basically strengthened the idea that your religious convictions can be used to, you know, I think it was originally brought up because of peyote and Native Americans using it for their spiritual practices. And at the time, saying, you know, it's against my religion allows for it. They said, yeah, but it's totally legal anyway, so too bad. And so there was a lot of legislatures that didn't believe in that. So that was why the Religious Freedom Restoration Act was made, so that you can do things if they are part of your religion. And we see that all over in the last couple of years because of COVID, people using religious exemptions to not do something that was for the public good, right? You're not getting a vaccination because it's against your religion.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. Then what are, you know, if you want body autonomy, fine. You have to have it both ways. Body autonomy means get out of my uterus. You don't get to decide. I get to have private matters. It can be with what I'm doing. If I want to have an abortion, that's between me and my doctor. And the Satanic Temple does a lot of suing based on that. That's what they do. So they are in the process of suing. I'm not sure exactly who, possibly Texas, but who knows? I don't know how wide a net they're casting. Probably trying to find the right argument under the right conditions of these abortion laws to make stuff happen, to make change happen. Because that's, even though they are a temple, they are secular, they worship nothing. They just have declared themselves a religion almost to make fun of the notion of religion and religious exemptions and all of that stuff. And they are fighting stuff like this.
Go to classic Satanist.
I would encourage everybody to either become, you know, Jewish or join the Satanic Temple.
I learned this recently. It's way harder to become Jewish than you think. So
I did know that. That's why
maybe go Satanist.
Good backup. So yeah, good backup plan.
You got to keep asking this rabbi. You got to ask him 3 times. It's like, geez, it's a lot of asking.
It's a lot.
I'm more of a 2 ask kind of guy, so guess no Judaism to me.
And I feel like I ran through that really, really fast because I have.
No, you're ripped.
I have passion about it, but also I know that you have got other things to do.
No, I've got other things to do, but we can fill the final hour. I can smell that
hour?
Dinner is being cooked. We can get to the hour. You go. I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
So a few thoughts. The first thought is I'm going to take out my right earbud because it ran out of charge. So the first thought is that contained within this are just a lot of arguments that I feel like that neither of them get to the heart of the other side's opinion. And this is what prevents any headway from being made, right? And this is what frustrates me about the whole thing, is that I don't think either side is even trying to have an argument at this point. They're just trying to like self-soothe and be like, I mean, I am right, right? Because, and you're going to end up being the punching bag of this because you are the one I'm
That's fine. I can take it.
Okay. So I know you can, but I'm just preparing the audience for it. Okay. So the argument, first, the argument that abortion is about like some sort of self-control thing and going to the, like, women need to close their legs idea. Obviously, that is just like such a broad way of looking at the problem and looking at abortion. But if that's what you're saying, right? If you are a Republican arguing for regulation of abortion, and that's what your argument is, then you need to be proposing a law that's like abortion is only illegal if this could have completely been avoided by you taking easy actions, right? So, was contraception freely available to you and easily accessed, right? Was you don't know, okay? You don't know. You're judging me based upon my jawline and facial hair and voice and the fact that I'm also a dude, and was born a dude. Um, I'm just saying, if you are, if that's what you're saying, if you're a Republican, that's like, well, what I hate about abortion is these people that all they're doing is they're just treating it like it's nothing. They're just getting abortions for no reason, and they're not taking responsibility for their actions. Hey, if that's your opinion, okay. But what you're arguing for is for more access to contraception, for more access to various different services, more access to sex education, and for abortions to still be legal in cases where it wasn't a fault of your own. Was contraception not available to you? Were you sexually assaulted? Were you not of age? All these various different elements would make it so that abortion needs to be legal in your worldview, right? So just listen to what you are arguing for. By that same token, right?
I agree.
Right, but that's what you're arguing for.
But also,
now,
then
I just want people to argue for their own side, right? Now, then you say, oh, you responded as if that's the only situation that abortion like occurs. Now, I know this is not what you meant, but what it sounds like you're saying is, well, in those other cases, abortion should be legal, but I guess in that case where it is somebody that's being complacent, abortion should be illegal. And my question is, if you're genuinely arguing, and I am, that abortion should be legal, in the first and second trimester, let's say, for everyone, regardless of if they, didn't take personal responsibility. If you're saying that, then you got to just stand by that opinion and go, when somebody's like, oh, people aren't taking personal responsibility, you go, I don't fucking care, because abortion's not a big deal. And that's the only argument. Again, but what both sides do is that the liberals are constantly talking about rape as the only situation that abortion happens, when it's not even what they're arguing for. We are arguing for
True.
abortion to be available. But then all we talk about is incest and rape, when this is like, I don't know, max 20% of abortions. Let's even say 50%. We're still arguing the other 50% should get abortions, right? It sounds like we're arguing they shouldn't. By that same token, Republicans are proposing complete anti-abortion laws while saying that they hate that the complacent people are getting 20 abortions a year, which is obviously not how many is even possible to get, but that's what they're saying. And I'm like, that's not what you're arguing for. You're arguing for it being completely illegal. So just argue your actual
didn't say
side.
I could only get one a year.
That would be interesting. Hey, it would be an interesting law. I don't really think that we should run the social experiment, but I think it would be an interesting bill to put out there and be like, we're just regulating if you're taking advantage of, but give me a break. Otherwise, it just frustrates me the way that people argue about this topic, because everyone's circumnavigating the real thing, which is just one of us thinks it's not murder, and one of us thinks it is. And then we both try to say, because we want to have our side to win, we both try to say it's an incredibly easy argument. And like, no, it's not. That's why the Supreme Court decision.
I'm very mad at how right you are right now.
That we lie everything on. Even that decision has nuance to it. Because, hey.
I agree. Okay,
what
here's
if?
my thing. I'm not even mad at the 15. I'm not even mad at the 15-week thing. I'm really not. Like, the 15-week thing doesn't seem ridiculous to me. 6 weeks seems ridiculous, but 15 weeks doesn't feel ridiculous. And I do think that should be a real discussion. Why have you arrived at 15 weeks? What is your concern after this point? I think that is a real discussion that we aren't having. So I guess you're right that we should consider that. I do think that they're kind of telling us 6 weeks we're talking about a heartbeat. At that point, we've decided a heartbeat makes it a real thing. Even though we believe conception, we're going to say here, because this feels like something that we can all agree on, is a heartbeat.
It feels like they're actually arguing against the opposing side, right? Which is crazy to me that they're actually thinking about it, because everything that they say outside of it is like they're not hearing us, right?
Yeah.
But that idea that they're pinning it to some scientific thing, at least it shows that a neuron is firing in this logic. And I just want both sides to have neurons fire. This is so here's my question. And maybe this is a little bit thought experimenty. But I genuinely think that there's no hard and fast answer to this. There's probably a wide gray strip, and one of us wants to push it to one end of the gray strip, and the other one wants to push it to the other end of the gray strip, or even further into the black. And look, that it's fine for us to like agree that that's the case. But what if there was a body of scientists whose whole point was they were trying to end this debate, and the way that they were trying to end this debate was to create a surgery that, as early as possible over the course of a fetus's development, as early as possible, creating a surgery that was as invasive or less invasive than an abortion, that would allow the child to be carried to term outside of the body.
Oh, an artificial womb.
If that existed, and the government agreed to pay all expenses related to it, and to create some sort of infrastructure for taking care of these kids, if all of those precepts were filled, would you be okay with disallowing abortion after that point, given that any woman that wants an abortion would be able to access this alternate service?
Okay, so in this scenario, the government is now in charge of this baby that you didn't want.
Yeah.
So they can do with them as they see fit. They can turn them into super soldiers, whatever.
I mean, yes, we should probably create some sort of anti-super soldier clause.
Why?
I'm with, or we should make a super soldier clause. And whenever the super soldiers get out of line, we'd be like, in 2017, you wouldn't even exist. You wouldn't have become conscious, you fuck. Get back in line. Yes, sir.
This has always been the thought for me as well. I've had this weird, when you talk about artificial wombs and being able to take a fertilized embryo out of your body, like we know we can take a fertilized embryo and put it into your body. Like that's what IVF is, right? But can we take one out when that's already fertilized? Can we safely take one out? Can we then freeze it? And later when you're ready, you can have this baby that you already created or whatever.
Yep.
Or whatever.
In my mind, this is the only solution that we as a society will ever come to get people to come closer together, is scientific improvement. Now, I'll tell you that with absolute, and you can write this down, you can write it in stone, this is exactly what will fucking happen. Because I think that we're going to get there. I think we're going to get there in the next 30 years. And here's exactly what's going to happen. Is as soon as that becomes possible, it will shift from a moral issue and become an issue of personal responsibility being put on the people, right? Well, you made a mistake, and now we all have to fiscally pay the bill of your kid. So you should carry it, and you should be responsible for it after it's born.
Oh. So
and that's what it's going to turn into, but that'll be an easier debate than the one right now. But it will absolutely be what happens, is that they're going to be like, well, I'm not paying this fucking kid's bill unless we turn it into something that creates oil or improves our military.
Did you hear the rumors about fetuses being used as fuel? Stupid.
I've heard so many rumors. Let me just say that from my vast chemical background, that's not an efficient system that you're creating.
That's my understanding. That would use more energy than you would produce, is my understanding. Fetuses are not a wealth of fuel.
Yep. But
I digress.
I just want to say, from the scientist's perspective, when consciousness starts is so up for debate. So and what
Yeah.
consciousness is, and whether or not consciousness matters if there's memory, right? Now, I think parents who take their kids to Disney World at the age of 1 would say memory doesn't matter. The joy of that child, who's clearly conscious in the moment, is enough, right? And then philosophers would say, well, either nothing matters because we'll all be forgotten eventually, or memory is not the thing that makes consciousness valid. So,
Dang.
if
We just went
if
real
consciousness
existential on this,
exists,
Colin.
I'm just saying, if consciousness exists, we don't know when it starts. We don't even understand how the system of a brain creates consciousness. So, and when I say we don't understand,
Get on it.
I mean, what? We have no fucking clue. So, it's called the hard problem, and I'd love to talk about it next week on Nobody Asked.
That might be a hard one. You're gonna have to wrap that around into something that I
It's
can understand.
literally hard. It's called the hard problem. It'll be a lot of work to get people's heads wrapped around it, but I do feel like it's a fun philosophical
Is it
conversation. It's fun. I don't know if it's fun for you. I think that when people think about it, their brains go, "Oh, I don't like thinking about my brain this much. No, don't like it." So
I don't know, man. I just feel like something, I feel like the evangelicals are up to something, and that they definitely want to reverse Roe versus Wade. And that is a concern to me. I don't think that I think that maybe individual people might have the feelings that you're talking about, where they feel like it's murder and they want to, let's figure out what that means. When does life begin, and have those real conversations. But I don't think that's what evangelicals want. I think they want to control every aspect of our lives. And I want to know.
They want their equivalent of Sharia law.
Yeah. And I want to know why. And I also want to say
they want
some
a
of these
Christian ethno state, man.
Okay. It might be something simple like that. Your dad just keeps saying power. It's obviously money and power. What else is there? The whole world is about money and power. And I'm like, there's something else. There's more. So, I just want to know, power to do what? Who wants the power? What are we doing? What's the objective? And it's the same thing here. So if suddenly we can't have abortions and we're all forced to have babies, then what? Then what? Then what? That's what I want to know. What's the then what? What's the goal? And that's where my mind goes, and that's what I worry about, is the then what, and just the. And I also want to say that I think that the reason that we bring up incest and rape all the time is because it feels like you don't care about women when you leave that out. I think that's why. That's the reason that
leaving it
people
out
bring that up. It's like, if you made an exception for that and you were still at the 15 weeks, people would be less annoyed, because I think people do realize, well, we do have to have a line. Somewhere it's a baby. Somewhere it is viable. It can live outside of you. And so maybe we should discuss that. But if you don't even want to protect people that had no choice of what happened to them, of how they got pregnant, then it feels like you don't care. It feels like you have a different agenda. And so I think that that's why people have a problem with that.
I agree with why people have a problem with it. And I think, and I really do want to get more into what the hell is going on with evangelicals. What is their end game? Who's controlling them? I love all of that. With the rape thing, that was more why I kind of liked that Brian Hughes person, is because he was saying the quiet part out loud. He was that this is why they're not hitting it, is because they've made their entire platform that abortion is murder. If abortion is murder, then you have to not make exceptions for that. Of course. And you have to go, this is a terrible situation. And it has been unfair to this woman. And this woman should go to civil court for as many damages from that man as they can. But no murder. And that is, of course, how they feel about it.
Here's my problem is, I think that people think, certain men, not all men, certain men think that murder is worse than rape. And I don't feel that way. I think a lot of women don't feel that way. They feel like rape is worse, depending on the situation. And
I think that 90% of the time, rape is worse. I think there's a very specific kind of murder that is worse than rape, and it is like murder for your own satisfaction. Most murder is like out of passion. It's
Yeah.
like there's always like a reason. That's why we look for a motive, right? But we
Yeah.
never really look for a motive in a rape case because it's about being a deranged fuckhead. So that's why it's worse. Is that it's taking for little gain. It's completely traumatizing and destroying someone because
Yeah.
you're a sociopath. You're crazy. You're insane, and you don't care about
You're
people,
not.
and that's why it's worse.
I disagree. Half the time, you're neither of those things. You are just an inconsiderate person who does not view that woman in that moment as a human being. They view them as an object of sexual desire, and they don't fucking care. They don't care. I
Viewing
don't think they're
people
crazy.
as objects of like
Dude,
of
so
self-satisfaction
many men are
is
like
like one
that,
of the
though.
main markers of psychopathy and sociopathy. That's one of the
I
main
would
markers. That's why I'm
I
saying
would
that
agree
word.
with you, but it is actually in the patriarchy. It is part of the design of our system to view women as sexual vessels. It's in the fucking Bible. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're
It's
right.
like, if you get raped in the Bible, you're supposed to marry that dude that raped you.
Yep.
It's like, are you fucking crazy? Why would I want to fucking do that? Do I hate myself this much? No. So I don't know, man.
I'm with you. It's not a good look for a guy that looks like this to take an anti-Bible stance, but I'll bite the bullet.
Oh my God. Thank you, Colin. Thank you for lightening the mood there. Thank
Absolutely. Hey, I love you, Mom. I
you. I
love
love you
all
too.
of you viewers. Do you want to play the sing song out? And we will see you guys next week on Wednesday.
Yes. Thank you for keeping us company.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's do it. If I can do it. Boo. Is it doing it? Show it. Why is that happening?
Nobody asked.
Is it?
Ooh, ooh yeah.
I don't know why it took so long to show up on the screen.
Nobody asked about the topics we talked about. We chose them before the show.
Just because I have
It
a
was
conspiracy
just us.
thing with them evangelicals. I don't trust them. They're up to something.